My name's Tony Bevilacqua. I'm the founder and CEO of Cognitive3D, and we focus on analytics technology for virtual, augmented, and mixed reality. We're based in Vancouver, British Columbia. We're a team of 6, and we've been building this since 2015. And we really came at it with this thesis that we needed to visualize data in a different way to be able to visualize and understand the context of what's going on inside 3D space. We need to really change the way that that data is collected, stored, and ultimately visualized to be able to see what's going on inside of a 3D experience. And we started just like everybody else focused, well, a lot of people focused on games and entertainment, understanding how people are interpreting experiences, how they're moving through the content, how they're engaging, and helping build a better mousetrap. But what we found is that our tools and capabilities were much more effective in being able to help quantify and understand what's going on inside of an enterprise focus use case. So there's two kind of key cases that I'm going to talk about today. First one on the left-hand side, we talk about training, simulation, understanding and quantifying, compliance, completion rate, how people are moving through content and how effective they were at completing what they needed to do within that simulation. The second one is around consumer research, and this can really expand to a lot of different areas. So we talk about like CPG, consumer packaged goods. It could be advanced product development like what Ford is doing here as well. But it could extend to a wide variety of use cases. And what I found was when I worked with a lot of these companies, they were interested in the prototype. They wanted to create the use case to be able to get the training completed, but they didn't necessarily know the objectives or the outcomes. They didn't have a way to measure it and really understand how people were interpreting these types of experiences. And measurement has really been around for quite some time. On the website, we've been measuring for quite some time. We have things like the ability to measure clicks, session time, page views, all those fun things. But the introduction of the mobile phone really kind of changed the way that we measured applications, and we started adding additional sensors. We started looking at GPS sensors and geographic location, compass data, touches, taps, slides, funnels, those types of things. And that's greatly expanded when we started moving into extended reality, especially when we're talking about head-mounted devices. We can now capture things like gaze direction and eye focus and head movement and how people are interacting with physical space and how they're reacting inside of a physical environment, all the way through to biometric sensors as well. And with that wealth of sensors, we can start building what we call digital twins, or things that look real, that the user experiences to complete some sort of task that they would do in their normal life, right? So if they're moving through a training simulation, maybe we can do that simulation more effectively, we can do it safer, we can collect a higher level of data. And that's really where we focus, the ability to collect gaze, path, geospatially focused events, and biometric sensors, and surface that to our customers so they understand what's going on inside of a 3D experience. We also realized that we needed to change the way that we visualize things, and we needed to have a visual solution to be able to tell the appropriate story of what was happening inside a 3D environment. So the use case I'm going to show you today is testing in retail. So this is like consumer packaged goods, and I'll just give you a quick example here. So this is Rob. He's wearing an HTC Vive. And in this particular scenario, he's interacting with a planogram. There's a variety of products on the shelves. And he also has an eye tracker inside of that experience as well. And what we've created here is a simulation of something that companies do physically today, every day. But the difference here is there's a quantitative approach to what we're doing. We're measuring things very specifically, very programmatically on what people are looking at for how long within the user's field of view to be able to understand and quantify how people are engaging in these environments. And we've created a series of visual tools to be able to measure and demonstrate that. What areas of the planogram are drawing the most attention from a customer in different configurations? What specific products, what specific product labeling performs best against your own packaging, as well as your competitor packaging within an experience. And this is just one use case. This tool, you can upload any type of scene and be able to extract these types of analytics. In the CPG space, we've really been focused on planogram and planogram configurations, user process and decision making. So being able to understand, what is the sequence of engagement? So what did the user look at first, second, and third? If it's a competitor product, if we move that competitor product, how do they behave after that? And we've created a series of dashboards and tools that pulls all of this analysis out of the 3D environment into a dashboard. It also helps us identify our high-performing packaging as well as how it might work with different types of competitor packaging. We visualize it in a couple different ways. The first one on the left-hand side allows you to do individual or aggregate sessions to be able to see what a cohort of users did or an individual user in a 3D space, so timeline-specific representation of exactly what that customer did. And then we allow you to do product or object-level extractions of what objects are drawing time from your customers, what are they looking at for how long, and you can compare multiple versions of the same item, or you can also look at your item versus another item within a particular scene. The second use case I call vocational training. It has other funny names with our partner that we worked on it with, but it's effectively a toilet simulator. It's one of the use cases that we could get a toilet sitting outside the managing director at a center's office, which I thought was really important. But ultimately what we did in this particular use case, we really wanted to measure the ability to extract insights from these types of scenarios. So in this use case here, with Accenture, we focused on being able to measure how effective this particular simulation was versus a traditional means of training like video. So in this case here, we constructed a toilet installation protocol. They went through that training, and then we had a second portion of that study going through the video training. And what we were able to find is that the people that went through this particular immersive training were able to retain knowledge more effectively. They were able to conduct the training more accurately and more effectively on the timing side as well. So higher accuracy in steps as well as the amount of time that the step took to complete. So what we focus on the training side, measuring the effectiveness of the simulation, being able to measure cohort effectiveness as well as individuals, testing for ordered and unordered compliance. So for example, if we think of an aircraft simulator and we need to do a startup process inside of a jet, the order of events is just as important as being able to understand if the objectives of that simulation were completed. So, you have to go through an ordered process of events. We call that compliance in our system. How compliant was the user with the ordered events that they needed to complete? And then we also have what's called a completion rate. And the completion rate helps us understand how many of the overall steps did the user complete within a particular scenario. And we have two different types of outputs. So the first one, very similar to CPG, is this ability to see how people interacted with the scenario. What did they look at? How often did they recall towards the instructions or other things that might be within the scenario? We also so the instructions within the scenario, and also the ergonomics of the workspace as well. So being able to see how people move back and forth between the tools and the instructions to actually execute the steps. We also provide objective reports, and the objective reports are focused on being able to look at how an individual performed across all the steps within a particular experience, and then we also have the ability to look at that on an aggregate perspective as well. So what steps are people most likely to fail on? What steps are most likely to cause an error that the user is working to complete? Ori introduced an idea this morning that I think everybody's thinking about with regards to privacy, and it gave me some pause around some of the things I was thinking about on my side as well. We've had obviously some big kind of developments on the European side around the types of data that are being collected, how they're being stored, and how they're being used. And obviously, it's something that brings me pause quite often. The reason it does is that we make a lot of decisions internally that we require implicit consent and explicit consent depending on the use case and how we collect data. We also require our customers to disclose the types of data that are being collected. The technology allows you to not be able to do that. And just to give you a couple of examples, this is a prototype that we built. If you think about what this is, it's a little bit jarring. This is an augmented reality prototype that shows you tracking locations of how people are moving through a geographic territory and what they're looking at from their field of view. So being able to detect using map data as opposed to computer vision to be able to identify where people are, how long they spent looking in a particular direction, and then being able to correlate that with mapping data that goes along it. You could do this with mobile phone data today if you have access to the compass as well as the GPS data. The second one was the sensors and capabilities in augmented reality. So this is a head-mounted display. It's just a Meta. You can do this with most of the devices, but this system here, we were able to capture point clouds and data sets directly from an augmented reality type experience, and you can actually see this guy's hand reach into the scene and interact with the space. Now, a lot of AR cloud type solutions are using technology like this to kind of build a model of the world. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities to potentially really take this type of technology to the next level, and the ability to maybe change the way that a business model is created, right? So maybe instead of invading somebody's field of view with an advertisement or something along those lines, perhaps measuring the space that users are already in, measuring the world around them instead. And I think that that's how this technology is going to be used, but it's also ultimately going to be in the focus of the developers to make sure that they use data in an ethical way, and they're also disclosing to their customers as well as the end users ultimately how they're using it. So with that, just a couple thoughts that I had there. There's a lot of different ways that you can use data inside of these experiences. With our platform in particular, we provide the ability to extract data from each individual user and aggregate that across a number of enterprise use cases, from training to simulation to product development, and be able to demonstrate the level of performance and ultimately ROI that an experience can provide. We do have a booth set up in the tools section of the exhibit hall tomorrow. If you're interested in checking it out or trying some of our demos, we'll have that available, including some eye tracking that you can test and try it out for yourself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
No
Some
worries.
questions for you.
Well, I feel like I might have answered some of the first part of it. I'll tackle the second one first, and I'll go back. So on the tracking of the gaze, there's no real kind of commercial consumer headsets other than the Fove that have actual retinal eye tracking as of today. So basically, if you do have a mobile phone or an HMD like a Vive or an Oculus, we will track center point. So you have general gaze tracking of what's going on within a scene. If you're doing any type of training, simulation, you're trying to understand consumer research, we typically request that you use an eye tracker. So you can add like a Pupil Labs eye tracker to a Vive or a Vive Pro if you want. With that technology, you can then add on a more accurate view of what's going on within the HMD. Now, this kind of leads into the next question. It's not to say that eye trackers won't be in all the headsets kind of moving forward. It's likely in the future that they will be. So I think that in the future, you will be able to access this data, but then the question will be, how is it used? How the platforms are going to allow it to be used? And is it kind of being used in an ethical way?